Hi, Mara. How are you? Good morning. We're waiting on two more people. Hey. Hey, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
There's just talking about the curve cut on Broadway where the C10 is going. So they want to retain the curve cut.
You think that
What?
you think they should? What
I'm looking into it.
and you think in the best case, like that would be great, but
What about a right turn only? How?
good idea. I mean, in the best case scenario, you would demolish that building and start.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is it bad condition?
I just think the way it's the parking
Oh, yeah.
and setback,
Design wise, yeah.
it's not in keeping with the urban
Yeah.
that we all desire.
What was that previously?
The right.
Well, no, but before.
It was built for the right. Oh, before it was like a bus
The
station.
terminal.
Right, the
Railway.
trailways terminal, right.
Yeah, it was like abutting the sidewalk. The
Right.
building abutted the sidewalk.
Right. I remember being told about this, not. Sorry, it's something less. Great,
It
okay.
was like during the pharmacy boom. They called the pharmacy boom thing where you
Yeah.
had the Walgreens built
Right.
the right
Uh-huh.
CVS Washington. All like very similar
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Feel kind of the case. Maybe we're in the Dollar General boom now.
But not knowing the details around the circulation there, like what's imagined in terms of business plan, I just like at a super high level, my gut says, well, you need to be moving toward the future. So if not now, when?
Right. Yeah, makes sense. And there's enough space on what is it there?
Well, that's the like I don't know the details,
Ah,
but
yeah.
like just at a high level.
Yeah, totally. It's a busy intersection anyway. I love it. Hi, sure.
Okay. It's good. It's been a while. Yeah. We still have this.
This is your food.
Hi, that's
Oh, okay. Sarah Kingston. It's to me too. I think I've seen you around. I just didn't know who you were.
probably been a lot of walking around with that.
Hi, Sarah. I'm Jonathan. So I'm very much for set your go off for.
Okay.
Where
Where are you guys based out of?
Our
Training for.
one more person, right?
off the street.
Yeah.
We have a handful of clients up in Sanya Beach as
Cool.
well, and I live up here, so.
Cool. Perfect.
Hi.
Morning.
Why don't you stay at the head of the table, Edward?
Okay.
Or you can sit there, wherever, it's just not here. We can sit wood.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Covering the cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first cold that I've had since having COVID. Last time I had COVID in September 2024. Good news. So I'm like, wow, I'm sick. What's that?
Right, yeah. Okay,
Just nice to meet you.
well, we're getting started, so I'm calling this meeting to order. So this is, we're calling this an orientation meeting. To get everyone up to speed with what we're doing, and catch everyone up with what's been done. I'd like to start with some welcome introductions first. I just wanted to say, first, Jess and Amara. Hello, Jess. Hello, Amara. Our counsel for this effort. Amara, do you want to quickly say anything before we kind of jump in?
Yeah, sure. As Bartek said, we'll be providing the orientation in this meeting. But I've been working with Bartek for, my goodness, the last 6 months plus, perhaps, on formulating this, I think, really wonderful and innovative idea for improving housing accessibility in Kingston in partnership, in a public-private partnership with the city. And really delighted to be supporting you all in this undertaking. By way of introduction to me and to Jess, my name is Amara Sedradine. I have a boutique firm called Sedradine and Wariski. We represent exclusively nonprofit organizations, mission-driven businesses, and in conducting their operations, across all phases of development and operation, from early stage projects like this one, through organizations with decades of operating history. We do a lot of work in the affordable housing space here in the city, as well as upstate in the Hudson Valley. I'm sort of bi-coastal. I spend part of my time here in the city, but I also live in Saugerties. So very nice to be here with all of you, and happy to pass the microphone to my colleague Jess, who is full-time based in the Hudson Valley in Woodstock.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm Jess. I am senior counsel at the firm, and as Amar said, I live just outside of Woodstock, and I've been up in this area for about 5 years. And prior to working at the firm, I was in-house at the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, which is a statewide organization that does foreclosure relief and a lot of good work for homeowners. Prior to that, I was an eviction defense attorney for Panther Legal Services in Brooklyn. So I have a housing background, and I'm really excited to be working with you guys. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jess, to Amara. And Amara, no, thank you. I've been thinking about this idea since 2024, which I think boils down to, how can the city use the tools that it has to be more involved in housing, right? We can incentivize certain things, we can allow certain things, but, we can't, by and large, like we haven't been able to get directly involved, right? In taking steps towards creating the housing that we know we want, right, or desire, or and need. So, Amara, thank you for helping me to think about how to take this idea and actually actualize it and be able to move forward. So with that, thank you also all for being here. Brandon, yes, great. So you're here as a member of the public.
As a member of the public.
Thank you for being here. Kai, you want me to start with a quick intro?
Yeah, my name is Kai, Lord Farmer. I am a senior planner in the Ulster County Planning Department. And the title doesn't mean much, but I'm kind of the resident housing planner for the county. Similar to Bartek, but on the county level. We don't have land use authority though, but act in similar ways a lot of the time. I grew up in Rosendale, and I'm a city planner and transportation engineer by trade, and worked in California for 10. Yeah, we're back here for the past 4 years in this role, and we work on a lot of different things together, et cetera, including a development corporation at the county too.
Hi, I'm Michael Kodransky, and I'm in Kingston. I've been in Kingston for 5 years as well. In Hudson Valley 5 years as well. And I'm trained as an urban planner and have worked mostly on transportation issues, but also at the intersection of land use and development, so transit-oriented development, and have worked internationally across the US and for nonprofits for the most part. So have also engaged with private philanthropy and other actors that try to de-risk public interest operations and infrastructure. And my background is and my educational background is in transportation infrastructure and environmental sustainability. So I worked at that nexus.
My name is Sarah Pasty, and I am here as an ex officio member. I am the chair, the current chair of the Community Housing and Development, Community Development and Housing Committee, been renamed.
Yes.
And I represent Ward 1 in Kingston. I've been on the council 2.5, I'm now entering into my second term, and have lived in Kingston for almost 6 years. And before that, I lived in Beacon for 18 years. So I know the Hudson Valley, and I have no experience with housing and finance other than having been a homeowner and also a renter in Brooklyn for 18 years. And so got to know the rental situation there, and Stony Run is in my ward. So the way I've gotten to know more about housing and tenants is sort of through the education I've gotten trying to work with the tenants there.
I was gonna say, you actually know a lot because you've been very
I've
active.
been in the trenches, yes, with Stony Run, which has a housing development fund corporation, and so I've been able to learn a lot about both the strengths and the challenges of that sort of form of organization. So it's been a very interesting education, and I look forward to learning more here.
And you're in the nonprofit world.
Yes, I'm retired, more or less retired. I still have clients for whom I write grants, but I spent all of my life in the nonprofit sector in the arts. And I ran the Sam Podorsky Museum of Art for 10 years and worked for a lot of small arts nonprofits, sort of helping them raise money. So my experience, you're right, is in the nonprofit sector. So that's been, yeah. So anyway, I bring that experience, to the table here.
Hi, my name is Emily Hamilton. I've been working in housing and community development for 25 years. I started in the Peace Corps, serving Guatemala and Paraguay. And then I've worked throughout New York State in housing. I started my housing career by working for an infamous state legislator, Vito Lopez. And yeah, more recently, I've been living in the Hudson Valley since 2014, in Kingston for 8 years. 8 years? It's going, yeah, August, so 8 years. So in terms of my experience with housing development and finance, most of that comes from, I work for HFA, New York State Housing Finance Agency, which is a part of New York State Homes and Community Renewal for 2 years, where I was an underwriter. And financed a number of projects in those 2 years. And then I worked for Rucco as a developer for over 6 years. And now I work for Community Preservation Corporation, a community development financial institution, where we focus on multifamily financing of multifamily projects. Right now, I'm in the middle of a closing, and that is not multifamily. That is actually single family, and it's supposed to close tomorrow for 16 single family homes in Amsterdam, New York. It's the first time this BIPOC developer is developing a project on its own of this size. So that's something that also Community Preservation Corporation specializes in.
So the one, I'd like to mostly spend the rest of our time here today focusing on background and just some of the materials that were in the package sent out. That being said, I believe there is one order of business, which is to for the invitees today to ratify or basically acknowledge some of the things that the incorporator, in this case, the city of Kingston, has done to date. And so at this point, the city working with Amara and Jeff, we have a certificate of incorporation. So we formally established this nonprofit with New York State. We have a set of bylaws that we've drafted, and we also have a conflict of interest policy. Now, this doesn't stop the board obviously from changing, for instance, the bylaws later on. But you're acknowledging what we put together, thus far. Have I described this, what they're doing, accurately, Amanda?
Yes, you have. And I will say, in preparing for this board meeting, recognizing the, kind of ambition of the vision, and the fact that this is really the first time that we're bringing this group together. Bartek and I discussed that we want you all to have the context for the work and to sit with these documents, and absorb them and ask any questions that you have. So do not feel compelled to ratify or adopt these documents at this meeting. Bartek, as the incorporator, has authority over this entity until you, the board, are officially composed. So really, I think for today's meeting, we're not asking you to take any actions. We're just presenting the work that we have done, give you an opportunity to ask any questions, and then at the next meeting, we'll have what is officially known as the organizational meeting of the directors, and that will formally constitute your first board meeting, where you will go ahead and ratify Bartek's actions to date, and approve the logistical steps necessary to carry the organization's work forward, which will include, authorizing us to take next steps like filing a application for tax exempt status. So I'll just pause now to see if you have any questions, because that's a little bit technical. But all to say, at this point, we have adopted, as Bartek said, the bylaws, which you should take a look through, a conflict of interest policy, which is very important for a, quasi-public body to have at the outset. And then, at the next meeting, you can suggest changes or move for the adoption of these documents formally.
This entity, which by the way, we've named Kingston Forward. I think it's an apt name. Is a subsidiary of the city of Kingston. And so there are some precedents for this with the Land Bank and also the Kingston Mobile Development Corporation, which are separate entities from the city of Kingston with their own board, but have a connection to the city of Kingston. And so, one of the aspects about the bylaws, which we, discussed a lot in detail, was, what's the appointment process? What's the connection back to the city of Kingston? What's the connection back to the common council? And so the structure of as proposed is a board of 7, and that includes 2 ex officio members. So that would be the mayor or their designee, which in this case is myself. And the second ex officio member is the common council's chair of the House Community Development and Housing Committee, which in this case is Sarah. So we have representation from the executive branch and also the legislative body. That does leave 2 vacancies on the board, which the board could choose to fill right at a later time. The board could, for example, ask the common council for recommendations when we feel like we're ready. But my intention and my goal with bringing this group together is, right, I can't be the only one doing this because I need help, right? I don't have the expertise necessarily to push this forward just by myself. So that's a quick overview of the bylaws and the kind of governance structure. Any questions on that? Thoughts?
You go first. The terms,
Years.
3 years. But then that would also switch with elections too for the ex officios.
Right. So they could change.
Sing along, term.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm happy to walk you all through the bylaws if you'd like to take that time.
That's okay, I was just noting that kind of piece of it and just the term length of the ex officio versus.
But it does say may serve a maximum of 3 consecutive terms. So even though there's a 3-year term, potentially somebody could stay on for up to 9 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mara, are there any other important aspects of the bylaws that you did just want to highlight?
Yeah,
Sure.
sure. You're on the topic. And so, when we set this up, this is a self-perpetuating board, which means that you all, as the initial board members, will elect future board members within the parameters set in the bylaws. But for the 2 ex officio directors, as Bartek mentioned. I think it's important to just acknowledge that even though this is a city-led effort, it is a self-perpetuating board, and neither the city of Kingston nor council has a controlling majority on the board. And that's something that we talked through and, explicitly structured that way. And Bartek, you can feel free to say more, but my understanding is that Bartek, as you have envisioned this, we want insight into it. We want transparency, and we want the city and the council to be able to guide the development and operations of this initiative. But it is ultimately self-perpetuating, and it is intended to bring in stakeholders to the conversation as well as the public. So this isn't a closely controlled organization. It is really intended to encompass the broad constituencies of Kingston that are interested in this subject matter and want to see, the improvement of housing accessibility from a variety of perspectives. But you all will hold the terms for these directors are 3 years, which means that you won't hold elections again for 3 years unless anyone steps down or you decide to create another position. We will eventually need to appoint officers of the board and of the corporation, but we have not designated those yet.
I have a couple of questions. I noticed that all of the positions sort of run, they're sort of running simultaneously. So there's no discussion about staggering board members. That comes up often in bylaws. So I just wondered why the decision was made to not stagger the terms.
Yeah, I think I'm
Go
happy
ahead.
to speak to it. It's a small board right now. Typically, we see staggering, when a board is maybe 9 people, I think. You could stagger it with a smaller number of board members. But I think in this case, the presence of the ex officio directors serves that purpose of ensuring continuity in such a way that staggering isn't as critical as it would be with a board composed of entirely, that is entirely self-perpetuating.
Oh, and one more question. In terms of the number of board members, you said that you were looking for an additional 2, because right now there are 3. And I guess the question I have is, it said there can be 7 board members, but the entire board is the total number of voting members. So if the ex officios can't vote, how does that relate to the total number of board members?
The ex officios actually can vote.
Oh, they can.
Yes. Yeah.
Oftentimes they're not. Okay, so they're voting members. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And that's clarified. I don't have the provision in front of me, but I think it's 2. Jess, maybe you can tell us 2.9 or 2.4.
The line that says, I remember it, ex officio members can.
Oh, here it is. I see it. I missed that one. Yes,
They're
they're voting members. Okay. Oh, and one last question. Sorry, to asking so
No,
many.
I
That's
love
why
to
we're
talk
here.
about bylaws. Yeah, exactly.
But this is just a question about the relationship as a subsidiary, to the city. What does that legal relationship look like?
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak briefly and then Amara might have something to add. Right. we're a subsidiary because we have this connection via the ex officio members.
I see.
There's also reporting requirements detailed in the bylaws. We have to report it out to the county council
Okay,
every year. And then there's also a financial connection, because we're a subsidiary, when there's a financial audit, our financial audit is actually part of this city's
I see.
complete kind of audit of finances. It's included within that, similar to how the land banks and the local development corporations is. So those are
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, all helps.
3 touch points, I guess. Anything else to add on that, Maura?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth understanding why we haven't set this up as a board controlled by the city. And Bartek, if you want to expand on it from the city's standpoint, I think that would probably be helpful.
Well, I think just to what you were saying earlier, having some independence and also insight from a greater group of stakeholders, I think is my motivation for how this board is structured.
May I just add in here too? The county has like a housing development corporation, very similar, nonprofit subsidiary of the county. And part of the motivation is the agility and nimbleness of that development corporation versus the entire executive branch or legislative branch too.
Mm.
So that's just, I think,
The nonprofit can do a lot more, like fundraising.
yeah, exactly, like legally, but also in terms of capacity as well too, because it's a very specific subject, kind of like the business or the development. You're
Exactly.
That's why, Laura, I'm noting that because that's why I also heard why you set up something like this.
Right.
Because of the nimbleness of it is still a public entity, but acts as a nonprofit or can move in a little bit more of a nimble way.
Mhm.
Kind of like a public authority. Like
Yeah.
HFN.
Mhm.
Yeah, so how I would describe this is more probably specifically as a publicly accountable entity. Because again, the governing body, if this were a pure subsidiary, we would either have the city of Kingston be the sole member of the entity with the power to appoint the boards, or we would have designees from the mayor's office constitute the majority of board members. Here we have not done that, and I want to be very clear and explicit about that. We have built in this defined connection to the city, but it is not owned by or fully operated by the city. And I think it would be helpful, certainly we'd appreciate your reflections on the structure, on an ongoing basis, but also I think we can come back to this conversation when Bartek has described, more specifically how his vision for how this entity will operate and the work that it will do. And then we would welcome reflection as to whether there are any refinements in its governance structure that we should make to either, strengthen ties to the city or city council, or otherwise refine our voting procedures.
Question.
Yep.
So how is this organization differentiated from the Kingston Local Development Corporation in terms of what the purpose is? I mean, why couldn't that entity have been used to reach the goals that you're trying to reach?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because we actually thought a lot about the landscape of other entities already existing in the city of Kingston and whether they could take this on, right?
Mhm.
That includes the local development corporation, that includes the land bank, and it actually also includes the housing authority. Housing authority has no capacity.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, they're focused on their own kind of real estate portfolio and kind of the massive backlog of attention. Although in other communities that have attempted this model, especially in the South, actually, it is actually their housing authority that's doing this work.
I know, right?
Yeah, Atlanta and also in Raleigh, North Carolina. For some reason, in the South, I'm not sure why. Housing authorities have historically have had a much closer relationship with their municipalities than in the North, and have more capacity.
Right.
Ours does not. They're doing great work, but they're not right for this. The land bank is really focused on rehabs.
Mhm.
The land bank is also focused on housing development, but I don't think that they're right for housing this potential role. Although, as I'll mention later, they could actually be a great partner. So this organization could help them build housing on some of the land that they've put together for future housing development, but they don't really have a clear financing strategy or way forward. So they could be a partner, but I don't think that they're right for this. And then the local development corporation is really focused on business development.
Right.
And so it just doesn't seem like it's in their lane.
Okay, thank you.
Questions on bylaws?
Just one last question, kind of on the maintenance piece. Like, we've got some sections on staff, or like hiring staff professionals out for specific work. The city is paying for the creation of the entity, but curious about how we should be thinking about maintenance of the board, bylaws, and like audit, all that stuff afterwards in terms of finance and funding.
Yeah, so that
Get a little bit from the city budget, or we have to figure out how to.
Yeah, so right at this point, right, it's been the city of Kingston that has been funding this effort, so that the expenses thus far has been a partnership with the Center for Public Enterprise, and so CPE, right, they're the ones that are nurturing some of these projects nationwide, and so they were involved at the early stage to conceptualize how this could be brought to Kingston, right? Bring best practices from some of the other communities that they work with. So that was a small expense. They mostly received foundation funding for their work. And then the second expense has been a legal counsel to bring this to this point. And then it's been mostly my time. In the other communities that are working on this, right? One goal is for an entity like this to be financially independent within 3 years. Obviously, it depends on how quickly things happen. But yes, in terms of if we actually have a deal, let's say, we would need outside consultants to kind of help us through that, and that would be part of some kind of a funding ask, right, to an outside party. In terms of major expenses, yeah, that would need to be raised.
Cool.
And where does this reside in the city's budget? I mean, that's one of the questions that I'll get.
Yep.
Which relates to like how are taxpayers funding this effort?
Yeah, so at this point, there's no financial impact to the city of Kingston. This was obligated as part of our ARPA funding.
Oh, okay.
Part of the housing, and so that's continuing. I was obligated, so it's continuing to fund this effort.
Great.
So I don't anticipate an ask via the City of Kingston budget for this work. In any fashion. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So we should be thinking about that.
Yeah, and I'll discuss that.
Okay.
That's right.
And that's what we need for bylaws.
Have you already spoken to other funding partners beyond the seed funding? Or like in a light touch, even like not yet?
Not really. I mean, I think, and this may be wrong, but I think for a serious ask or a serious discussion, right, there needs to be, I think, a board, right? Had some idea of how this is proceeding. rather than just an idea that's what the
Yeah.
person has.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be in a better position, in a couple of months.
Yeah.
Is there a conflict of interest statement to sign, or is this just isn't the policy? Sorry, there is one.
There is, it's attached to the policy.
Just curious if you could go over what's specifically like the difference between this conflict policy versus the regular non-profit conflict of interest policy. If there's anything.
Sure.
I
There,
would
there
further-
actually, yes,
Another.
yeah, there actually isn't. This is a standard, just nonprofit conflict of interest policy. It requires that you disclose on onboarding and again annually whether you have any interests that you hold directly or through business relationships that you may have that would engage in any business transaction with the organization or receive any payments from the organization. It requires that you disclose whether you have any personal or business relationships with any other board member. And that you recuse yourself from decision making in the event that any of these interests are implicated by a transaction with which the organization is contemplating engaging, and the relationships that you disclose are considered internally and then disclosed each year on the organization's 990, which is the financial report that you have to that Kingston Forward will have to file with the Internal Revenue Service and with the state of New York.
Thank you.
And there are no additional requirements that are imposed on any board members, relationships, because this is not a city-controlled entity. Again, this is really it's an unusual creature. It is not set forth by statute, and there are no additional requirements that are imposed on your governance procedures because of that public structure.
In terms of assigning different roles, will you be the chair?
Well, we haven't, I thought about it honestly. I think we should start thinking about it, right? And then at the organizing meeting, obviously, set some roles out. Yeah.
And did you have an idea of who could fit what role? We've thought about like what are our backgrounds?
I thought about like what the individuals who I know who have the expertise that I think would be really helpful for this in terms of specific skills I have. Because I don't want to delegate something to someone that doesn't want to actually.
Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Sure.
I'm just curious. I've helped form a nonprofit before, and I've sat on 2 nonprofits before, never in one in an office. Just curious about this experience.
I've been on one nonprofit board and I've never been an official officer. I've always just been
I've been on many boards. Yes, I understand how they work, and I think Bartek is correct when he says that, officers, really you want them to sort of step up because you're taking on an additional responsibility, and so appointing them is not generally what's done. You sort of hope that, somebody is going to agree to step up into the role.
I'm an advisor to the Taproot for And I'm a mentor to Growing Homes, which is for former housing and former housing. Currently, I was on the planning board, but no, I mean, and I've witnessed Taproot forming into a board. Well, it started when I was at Roco, but that's about it.
And I would say that these bylaws look pretty standard, according to the boards I've sat on, as committees, all of them are sort of similar in their organization.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd say, right, it would be my preference for me to not be the chair. Because I don't necessarily, right, it'd be great for someone else to take that on. However, right, that's obviously up to discussion that, what is the step up. We don't have to decide today.
Yeah, I'm on the transit advisory committee, which is advisory for Ulster County, and there's always who's going to take what role, and it's radio silent.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
I'm interested in the chair role. I've been a secretary previously, so I'm pretty familiar with that. It is the most work of all.
Secretary or
Yeah, I think secretary
Secretary is definitely the most.
is absolutely the most work. Ex officios can be officer.
What roles have you been in on boards?
Oh, I've been in all roles. I've been a chair, I've been a vice chair, I've been a secretary. Actually, I have not been a treasurer.
What's our?
So I would say the treasurer might be the most work, and we should talk about that, Bartek. And we haven't. The secretary's role is essentially to take minutes. You can always invite someone in to take minutes. It doesn't need to be a board member to perform that function, which then greatly alleviates the responsibility of being a secretary. You're just reviewing the minutes. So it can be a much lighter role with some support. The treasurer, of course, is responsible for maintaining the books and records of the organization, the financial books and records of the organization, and generally liaisoning with the accountant to put together year-end financial reports. So that can be involved. Bartek, what is your vision? And I know we've talked a little bit about this, but not explicitly, for how the day-to-day operations of Kingston Forward will unfold. And I think that will help us make a decision around officer roles.
Right. So, at this point, myself as a staff member would continue to manage the project going forward up until such time as we decide, because of what might be happening, hey, this would be better served by a full-time employee or a part-time employee or what have you. But I'm committed to lead it forward up until that point. Otherwise, right, the rest, the sort of expertise would come from outside legal counsel, not internal to the city of Kingston, an outside accountant, and then when there's a project, right, outside underwriting support, outside legal support for each particular project. So the day-to-day would be driven by me, right, not by the board, with the kind of outside consultants, accountants, what have you.
So to that point, then, Bartek, I might suggest, if you're comfortable with it, that you be secretary and treasurer, and then we appoint someone else to be chair.
Great. Makes sense.
You can hold two positions.
And then no problem with one person holding two positions, Amara? I don't think nothing in the bylaws says, you couldn't. Yeah.
There is one reference in the bylaws which is drawn from New York law, and that is that the same person cannot serve as secretary and president. So that's the only overlap that's prohibited.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And would it be worth putting that in here, that the secretary and treasurer positions can be, someone can hold two positions, or no?
It is in there.
I'm looking.
Here, let me.
And where is that?
That will be down in the officer section.
Okay, I'm looking
Um,
at.
Let's see,
that-
so,
Oh, yeah, it says any number of offices, that's in section 3.01. Any member of office may be held by the same person.
except that the same
Except
person may not
for chair and
simultaneously hold, yep,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
There it was.
I maybe jumped the gun on that conversation.
No, I think it's great that we had a
Okay.
conversation. Thank you.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Derail us.
Okay, any other questions on this?
I actually do
item?
have
Oh,
one other
yeah.
thing to point out. I should have mentioned this in just discussing the conflict of interest policy. There is one, it is, I think, very standard for nonprofit corporations generally, but I want to highlight that in addition to financial conflicts of interest causing recusal, we have built in that organizational or relationship conflicts are also reason for recusal. And so here, the relationship to be mindful of is engagements in which a director may be involved that with organizations that do business with Kingston Forward, such that the individual involved may not receive a financial benefit, but there is still some sort of professional overlap. So if you are on the board of another organization that is doing business with Kingston Forward, even though you won't receive any financial benefit from that transaction, that is an interest that constitutes a relationship under this conflict of interest policy. Again, relationships are not prohibited, but they must be disclosed, and the interested person has to recuse themselves from decision making. So when in doubt, if you have any relationship or affiliation with an entity that engages in any way with Kingston Forward, it's a great idea in the context of a board meeting or by email to Bartek, now the secretary, to just let him know about this relationship, disclose all material facts, and then recuse yourself from the conversation.
I'm assuming that includes formal employment.
Former employment, it doesn't explicitly. I think the essence of the organizational conflict of interest section is that there should be a sort of field test to it. If you feel like you are still involved, if you feel like it could cause some public consternation, or then err on the side of disclosing.
I have another scenario hypothetical.
Sure.
So you work for CPC, I work for the county. There's a limited ecosystem of developers
Yeah.
in the area. We are working with a developer on projects in our 9 to 5 day capacity for Ulster County, and then we begin potentially engaging with the same developer or members of the same team of a group. I should recuse myself from that because in my mind, the conflict is that I want them to finish my project first. And so I would probably recuse myself from those
Absolutely.
discussions. But again, I don't want to just be right. If we're working on one project, so I'll just hold that balance. But yeah.
I think that's right. So the standard in the conflict of interest policy is a relationship that may give rise to an appearance of being influenced by other considerations. So that is the standard. And what I think we might want to do for the next meeting, perhaps, is come up with some hypotheticals so that we can give you some concrete examples of situations that call for recusal, given the relationships that you all have.
I'll just err on the side of caution. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's all.
Review these and sign them, give them to you.
Yeah, I think we can all continue to reflect on this and then at a future meeting, we would actually vote on whether these,
The bylaw.
yes, the bylaws.
Since they haven't been adopted, no conflict of interest form is required to be submitted.
Yeah.
Not at this point. Yes.
Not today.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, thanks for that discussion. So for the remaining 40 minutes or so, just wanted to go over some of the materials that I sent, high level. So that we are all, I think, on the same page. We're doing. Okay. So one of the things in the board package is this overview memo. The goal of Kingston Forward, boiled down, is to provide low interest construction loans through a revolving loan fund. And so this Kingston Forward will need a revolving loan fund of a certain size that can be scaled, of course. And from the revolving loan fund, this organization will make a low interest construction loan. When each project is stabilized, meaning that construction is done, at least the funds will go back to the revolving loan fund, and Kingston Forward can help to fund another project. That's the basics. Another important aspect of this organization, however, is that as part of the revolving loan fund, there are certain strings. Okay, and so one of those conditions is that the project actually becomes publicly owned. So the public, in this case, the Kingston Forward, will have ownership over that project long term. And second, is there are certain affordability metrics that we want each project to have. So a project becomes mixed income. Each project will target 20% of units to be affordable at 50% area median income, which I refer to as deeply affordable, and then another 10% at 60 to 80% area median income.
Sorry, second one again, 60%.
60 to 80%.
60% at.
Yeah, so 20% at 50%, and then another 10% between 60 to 80%.
Do you have that written down anywhere?
Yeah, so it's
It's right there.
So I did look at that document. So the question, one of the questions I had was in terms of it's going to be targeting 20% of units to be affordable based on underwriting, which would determine the amount. Now, what if the
yeah,
so what happens if the underwriting determines that only 10% or 5% are going to make this?
Yeah, I think
How to?
I think maybe targeting isn't the right word. I think it is a requirement. So it is
Good, okay, that was-
the 50% AMI units, the deeply affordable units, are a core aspect of this project. And then it's really the kind of other aspects of underwriting that determine the 60 to 80% of kind of where that lands. I should also say these are minimum numbers. So based on a particular project,
So it could be-
you could have more. But I think these are the kind of core things that the organization will have, non-negotiables of the organization.
Right, and will that be set forth somewhere so that, the board members are aware of it, or when it comes to voting on a project, or
Yeah, I'm not sure where it would be
Be
set
termed
for.
of loan
Yeah,
potentially.
maybe
in
like
terms of the loan? Yeah, I'm just
certain terms. I mean, I think.
how to codify it, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure where to codify these things,
You
but
could put it in a term sheet,
yeah, it would be a part of the term sheet.
because basically what we're doing is financing loans, right?
Yes.
And so we need to provide term sheets as to how, the term of the loan, the interest rate, and the conditions of the loan.
That's our teeth,
Mhm.
is that we're loan.
Have you worked out, have you scenario planned at a high level even, like what kind of deal flow you would need with projects in the pipeline versus money in the revolving fund?
Yeah, so the Center for Public Enterprise did do some modeling on this, a significant amount of modeling actually. And so, if the revolving loan fund, for example, had $12 million, we could support a project up to 200 units.
You shared that model with us, too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's in the board package.
Okay.
And so if it's less or more, right, you would have a smaller or larger project. But that's a figure that came up from their modeling.
Well,
So- And I should mention the remaining
Oh, sorry.
the remaining units that are not part of this affordability kind of matrix. Based on modeling, they wouldn't be like luxury units, they would be targeting 90 to 120% of AMI rates. Those would be the market.
So 30% affordable,
Mhm.
the rest market rate, or that range.
And have you thought about how that initial nut of $12 million would be raised, or could this go in a phased program? So you raise a certain amount of money, at the start, then more money, and then you could fund a smaller project.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, in some of the other communities, and I mentioned this in some of my discussions with the county council,
Mhm.
like for instance, in Chattanooga, they actually took their entire allotment of ARPA funds and put it into the revolving.
Rockland County, as a closer example, took all their funds and put it into they call it the Halo project, Halo Fund, I think, and it's a revolving loan fund for bigger projects, but it's very smart of them.
Since we don't have any other ones.
That's 2020, right? But yeah, I think that even in Chattanooga, they are looking at their philanthropic partners to add to that revolving loan fund and also fund operating costs, kind of long term. And so, again, it would be an ask to an outside entity for operational costs and also the revolving loan fund. And yeah, I think what's the benefit to any philanthropic partner is that this is, as you mentioned, a legacy, right? It's a legacy gift, right? It's not a one-time donation in the sense that the revolving loan fund will continue to fund projects for a very long period of time. So,
No, that's important, I think.
yep.
The example from Atlanta and Montgomery County, how long have those entities existed? And how's their success rate been?
Mhm. Yeah, so in Montgomery County, they raised their revolving loan fund via bonding. And their first project has been kind of completed, so it revolved out. And they're quite pleased with it. The county legislature actually added more money to the revolving loan fund, and so now they're working on their next kind of phase of projects. So Atlanta isn't as far along.
I see. So it was bonded money.
Yeah.
Have you considered that too?
I have not considered that.
And I would think that would be a hard road. I mean, you would probably find that the common council will probably not do any more bonding because we really have a significant amount of debt from existing bonds.
Yeah, we were talking about the stadium, for.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe once we paid off the Deep Stadium, that's not gonna happen
I mean,
anytime.
I'm not sure if it's even an option. Because, legally, we would have to do a deep dive into the authority of the common council to bond for something like housing, because it isn't like an infrastructure per se.
That's right.
So there's also legal kind of quandaries there.
Go ahead.
At the end of the day, the Kingston Forward would own the land underneath. This nonprofit would own it, not the city itself.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's some liability separation risk, et cetera.
So this nonprofit would move from being an asset developer to an asset manager.
Yeah, I guess in a way, yeah. Well, both.
Right,
Yeah.
concurrent.
Yeah. Mhm.
Maybe a follow-up question to that too. I know in Montgomery, like the entity is a majority shareholder, but not sole.
That's right.
So in terms of operations maintenance of the property, sometimes there's partners that can come in and be the acting partner, managing partner.
I don't, and that's exactly right. I don't envision that this entity would manage the day-to-day of any particular project. That would not be the role of this entity. It would be a partner. Yeah, it would be, that's absolutely not right. No way, right? It would be whoever is the partner,
It's-
it would be their responsibility.
It's similar to a low-income housing tax credit. Limited partnership, where the syndicator, or the investor has a 99.99% interest in the property, but yet the, general partner is the one who's doing the day-to-day operations.
I guess that leads to what is the relationship between this entity and the developer? Because this is a partnership with the developer, and somehow reading through this, it seemed that the developer has an interest in sort of managing the property. So what is the balance between, what does that partnership look like between the nonprofit and the for-profit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's to be decided a little bit or to be explored. I think in my mind, Kingston Forward, right, would set kind of would provide some oversight, obviously, would be the involved public agency, but it wouldn't be so much involved in the day-to-day. But again, these are things that.
That would be worked out over time. Okay.
Yeah, I think the vision that we had anticipated. So we have Kingston Forward, which is kind of, as we see it, the parent, and will oversee potentially multiple. So yes, here's the chart. Potentially multiple developments through a subsidiary structure. So new nonprofit. This bright blue square is now Kingston Forward. And Kingston Forward would create one or more, we anticipate more, many HDFC subsidiaries. And so in these contexts, there's a variety of ways we can structure it. The subsidiaries, either Kingston Forward would be the sole member of some of its subsidiary entities, or it would just have control to appoint the board without assuming the membership structure. And then it is at the subsidiary level that the relationship with the developers would come in. And those could be structured, in any number of ways to suit the outcome of that particular project. So really, this is a very flexible vehicle that with our charge being to oversee and suggest projects for fulfillment that will then be executed outside of Kingston Forward by its subsidiaries.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, though, I think this is where there would have to be a lot of discussion in terms of what are the expectations of financial return from the developer, and how do those expectations relate to the goals of Kingston Forward. So all of that would all of that be determined when the relationships were entered into, the legal documents?
Yeah, and I think to Emily's point, where we would have a term sheet at the beginning that sets some of
That would
these.
set that all out.
Yes.
We would decide upon collectively beforehand, excellent, before we go into any sort of relationship.
And then would we have a regulatory agreement on the property?
Well, we would be the owner of the property.
Right.
Would you put a restrictive code on that? So.
So.
I think it really depends on the nature of the business proposal at issue. And so this structure is flexible enough to allow us to have multiple different relationships with multiple different developers and projects. And depending on the business case for the development of that particular site, we would have the flexibility to manage multiple transactions, in the most advantageous way. And so the way that we are seeing Kingston Forward is, and I apologize, I can't see who in the room was speaking, but we will have, Kingston Forward will oversee, decide the high level terms and outcomes for particular projects. and then ensure that they are managed towards that goal, towards those goals over time.
Okay. And this is in perpetuity.
Right?
This is
That's
in
right.
perpetuity.
I mean, I knew that, still.
Until it becomes, I mean, we can envision an outcome where, Kingston Forward facilitates the development of an affordable housing, an affordable housing unit, and then ultimately, accomplishes the purpose, its purpose for being involved, and the affordable housing unit is sustainable over time. At that point, Kingston Forward can then exit the relationship, with whatever conditions and certifications it requires to ensure that the property is stewarded for affordable housing, for some period of time. So it is not essential that Kingston Forward itself maintain involvement in the, projects that it seeds. It is really acting as a facilitator, to ensure that these projects are developed in the interest of Kingston, and the goals of creating more affordable housing. And whenever it determines that that purpose is fulfilled, it will have the flexibility to exit the relationship and allow, for example, the property manager or the developer to steward it forward over time.
One other thing I wanted to call out from this memo is one of the reasons why I embarked on the journey is that the affordable housing developers in Kingston actually they want an alternative source, right,
Yeah.
to finance their projects. The low income housing tax credits, there's actually typo that says long, but that's also true. Low income housing tax credits, right, they are very competitive, oversubscribed, very complicated. No, right, they're not great, right? And so to also have an alternative financing strategies for our kind of local developers, I think it was another reason for the payments too.
Just a anecdote there too. I was talking to someone from the state finance, HCR. They were saying with the federal environment where it's at, even low income investors in low income housing tax credits are getting scared because there's not a signal from at the federal level that housing is an important purpose to fund. Then private investors on the other end are not going to invest, and so it's like, what's the other, what else do we have out there?
That's right.
It's getting harder.
Not a reliable source.
And the pricing is getting worse.
And so, even from where I'm sitting, right, I see there are some,
Especially in smaller.
yeah. And I see some affordable housing projects kind of taking shape in Kingston around the city. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna do low income housing tax credit. And it's a red flag, right? I'm like, oh, there's 3 of you, like, good luck,
Yeah.
And so I think to have an alternative to that, that still fulfills, right, some of the essential goals of of the low income housing tax credit program, I think would be fantastic.
And can be tailored to our community.
Yes, that's right. And rely on local resources, not external actors that are budget.
So going back to the idea of perpetuity or long term, typically with a low income housing tax credit project, after usually 15 years, you have to refinance because you need capital investments, you need new bathrooms, you need kitchens, you need new heating systems. Will this also be financing for that too?
I hadn't thought about
That far?
Can I just throw one more out there too? Existing housing
Oh, yeah.
in Kingston that needs upgrades that maybe could be brought into the fold of mixed.
That's easier to do than getting financing for new housing.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that either. I mean, that would honestly be a great thing. I could bounce off from CE just to see if they've thought about this. But I think honestly, in my view, I've a little bit focused on new construction.
Yeah, I think
But
that's
it doesn't,
Emily, you worked on self-help housing? You know about that?
It's mostly in California, right?
Well, it used to be that HUD had like a whole self-help housing.
Right.
funding Program.
Right. I just feel like it's more popular there.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, people self-help housing. They're good on the Central Coast. They act as a nonprofit housing developer. They do a lot more programming on homeownership and community empowerment for the units themselves. So they still help. So that, I don't know if that was your question.
Well, so would these units be for rent or would they be for?
Rent.
All for rent?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds like we got imaginations of what it could be, and it's probably good to focus on one.
No, but all this is very clarifying.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
That's it.
In 2024, CBE helped me put out a request for information from potential developer partners. I think the reason being is that I didn't want to embark on this path if no one said they were interested in this model locally. We did receive 6 responses, and those are all in the board package. Some of the names will be familiar to you. For comparison's sake, Syracuse actually did also put out an RFI last year. They also received 6. So I think
The Saints.
6, different 6. So, right, on a per capita basis, you would expect them to receive a lot more
Right.
due to their
Right.
size. So I think that I consider that to be positive reinforcement that there would be interest in the development community in working with us on this one.
We got money.
So I just wanted to mention that. A big thing is obviously project pipeline. So finding a project. So there's a memo in the board package on that. And so, but I do not have a project in mind per se. I do not. I wish I did, because that'd make things easy, but I do not. You mentioned Montgomery County, Michael. Actually, the first project was a market rate project that stalled out due to lack of financing, and so that they were able to convince that market rate developer to kind of enter the model, right? Therefore, they had to abide by the affordability that's set out. The Housing Opportunities Commission, right? They assumed public ownership over that project. So everyone was happy because the developer got the project built and this public agency got their affordability and public ownership. So this a stalled market rate project could be a source for a project here in Kingston as well. The challenge is we don't have many market rate projects, but you could envision a scenario where this ends up being a source of a project for Kingston.
Could this also be a source of funding for stalled affordable housing projects?
Absolutely. So, yeah, so this would, another category is oversubscribed low-income housing tax credit project. So if a project goes in for their LIHTC and doesn't get it on like 1 or 2 rounds, or maybe they thought they wanted LIHTC as we discussed earlier, but would be happy with the alternative source of financing. So yes, this would be a great potential source of
I have a question.
projects.
On size of projects. Part of this is we have a little more flexibility on the number of units versus like minimums for LIHTC, which are, if anyone doesn't know,
They're increasing
they're increasing. I don't know exactly, but it's
150.
150 and
What? 150 minimum units
Minimum
for them to get the
to
financing.
get
You're talking about for
be
4%, though.
competitive. 4%.
That's
and 9% is
Now, 9% still around 40.
40.
It depends where the project is. I mean, I've seen in Westchester, projects around 30 units get financed with 9%.
So I'm just thinking about like if they're like one of the pools of potential projects, and we kind of want to match what we have relative to the size of the projects they have, I guess,
Right.
or loans that can match
Yeah, and this is,
size.
yeah, I agree, and this is why it's great we can scale, so, right? So even if we have a revolving loan fund that's smaller,
For a 40-unit project.
we can help a 40 unit project move forward, which would be obviously impactful for Kingston. Even if it's not a larger project, yeah. And then the third potential source of projects, would be city-owned land. So this is land where it's within city control, and then from the get-go, we could say this will be a Kingston forward, project. That would be the source of financing for it. What's great there is that, the development cost, right, would be cut down because the land costs would be smaller. So that could be those are the main three buckets of kind of what we've seen. Nationwide.
City on land, stalled tech projects, stalled market
That's
rate
right.
projects.
Yes.
What about vacant privately owned land?
Yes.
Never mind.
Yes.
Yes,
Potentially.
hard, much harder.
Right. Much harder.
Okay.
Yeah,
The cost of land, I think, would be a factor in that case.
Right, part of the tool is.
Yeah, that would impact the model's ability to work. I think
Okay.
those, yeah, that costs.
Unless they give it to us for free.
Yes.
I'm not familiar with any light tech stalled projects, but market rate, there is one pretty big one.
Mhm.
I don't have to.
Which one? Yeah. Yeah, so the challenge with that project is it's actually Kingstonian. The challenge with the Kingstonian is it is a housing project in some ways, but it's also a parking project.
right.
And the cost of that parking garage is enormous.
As it goes.
And a city investment.
And so, well, there's no city investment, but they do have a tax agreement for the parking garage component. But because of the parking component and the cost of that, it's wouldn't really work for this month.
Mhm.
For better, for worse.
Just noting one thing too here, like we're essentially the financing or support for the developer, but on the planning and the approval side, similar to you step fully back from that.
Yeah.
Although hard to, if we're kind of engaged with stalled market rate projects. I mean, approvals are one thing too, but it's a small town. So
Yeah, I mean,
we're the entity making the project happen. It's unavoidable.
yeah.
But
I mean, what's great with any stall project is we can talk about the Kingstonian, right? It's already approved. Everything's approved. And so if an entity like Kingston Forward was able to step in, say, hey, developer, would you work with us? You would have to abide by these affordability guidelines, right? We would assume public ownership of the project. And they might say, great, like this is what we've been waiting for to move this project forward. So everyone wins, but
Why don't they just decrease the parking?
now we're getting deep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Got it, okay, got it.
but that was one of the, I mean, that's one of the early requirements from the city for the project.
Got it.
Where
I
is
think-
this?
Uptown.
I'll just make a note here. I feel like projects can stall for different reasons. And we can discuss which tool we want to insert ourselves into, but I imagine we want to be in the one where it's like, oh, you got a good project, but your financing is not together.
That's right.
And that we need to come in there, not on the whatever. It's like an existing project to try to remedy a larger planning
Mhm.
issue. And
Right.
we are planners that care about the project, so we should probably inform the projects too.
Mhm.
But I'm just noting those two things, like, we wouldn't wanna just finance a bad project, obviously.
Yeah.
And the better the project is, hopefully the easier it is for the community.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep. those are the main things I wanted to review from the board package. Any other questions, general thoughts? Okay, so I think,
I would say maybe next time we could talk about the Housing Development Fund Corporation, because I do have questions about that structure. You know, how that is put together.
You can ask me those questions for the
Oh.
county or for
Well, for.
oh, an HDFC, not just a regular.
Sorry.
yeah, so we can talk about it briefly, since you brought it up. So, one of the things, in one of the ingredients, right, for a project like this to work is that it will probably need a tax abatement schedule.
Mhm.
Right, a pilot. In order for the city of Kingston, to grant that project, that pilot, right, we have to talk about what's the authority under which a city like Kingston can grant such an exemption. And so we can grant an exemption to housing development fund corporations under real property tax law, I think it's 577, for up to a period of 40 years. Okay, and so that's one of the reasons why we have the entity Kingston Forward, right? We're creating an HDFC for each project so that the common council can grant each project, the tax abatement schedule it might be. And then there's obviously a whole host of other compliance things with HDFCs, part of that. But again, just keep in mind, right? It's Kingston Forward creating that HDFC. And so there's kind of this public aspect of it that, right, maybe with Stony Run, right, you've been disappointed with. But right, there's HDFCs all over running around this town. Because that's
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
that's
Oh, yeah.
how you kind of can make a project, affordable project, mixed income project.
Okay.
And it's the tools that the state uses
That's what-
to monitor long term for any project that they fund.
And is each corporation unique based on the individual situation, or is there sort of a general standard for
Each project usually has its own HDFC corporation entity with shareholders on the project. Or, yeah,
But in this case, if Kingston Forward were involved, then it would have some control over what
That's
what
right.
it actually looked like.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I have to say, in thinking through the agenda, I wish we had the program overview before we talked about the governance documents and the structure documents. But yes, that is exactly the flexible structure that I was referring to. We have Kingston Forward that is the overseer, but then each individual project is managed through its own HDFC subsidiary and can be tailored for the very specific context that you're facing with respect to that development.
that's how the entity would steward the projects long term, because we have a stake in the ownership
Got it.
through each of us, HDFC.
Can you just comment super briefly on the distinction with the Kingston Housing Authority? Like the nuance? Yeah.
Completely separate.
No, I mean like
Um,
that is an entity that that owns the housing, right? And is also the asset manager. But it's not developing more housing. That's the distinction. It's not actually financing.
They are looking at, as part of their rehab kind of strategy for the housing that they have, is actually demolishing some of their housing and building new units. So they are will be doing that. And
So they
what
might
they're-
actually even tap into this fund.
Potentially,
Oh,
that's right.
interesting.
It's themselves.
Yeah, the housing authority is its own special creature.
Okay.
Great. Next steps,
Next meeting.
is, we do, need to schedule an organizing meeting. So we can do that now, or we can do it over email. This would be where we would actually ratify the bylaws and some of the things that we discussed. Or you guys wanted to do, would you like to schedule it?
We're all here. We'll do it now.
Yeah.
How is March 24th? Same time.
Mark, I think that's no good for us. That's the same day as the
Ah,
city bar.
that is true.
Otherwise,
Yes.
How about the 25th?
How about the 25th? City of Kingston. And the
Perfect.
Password is City Hall 2001. Lowercase.
25th at 10.
Yep.
That works for me.
Is it gonna be an hour and a half as well?
Depends. Doesn't have to be. It could be an hour.
Okay, I have a meeting at 11.
We could meet at 9:30.
Would 9:30 work for you?
Amar, does 9:30 work first?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the 25th at 9:30, I'll send out a calendar invite.
I appreciate the name and that we're not calling the development, local development.
Oh, local development corporation.
Local corporation.
Yeah.
Gets people back.
Yeah.
Corporation, oh, stop.
Exactly.
Did you say an hour?
An hour,
Essentially 90 minutes.
but an hour with potential for overflow.
Okay, so I'll just book 90 minutes.
Okay,
Thank
with that, I'll close the meeting. So thank you all so much. Jess and Amara, thank you as well for your guidance and input.
Absolutely. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.